This episode of the Driving Safety Show is sponsored by Drivers Alert, celebrating 30 years of helping companies keep their drivers safe. To learn more, visit driversalert.com. Distracted driving, drunk driving, drowsy driving. You want safer roads, and so do we. You're listening to the Driving Safety Show. Hear insights, in-depth analysis, and expert advice from key players in the private, public, and nonprofit sectors who are leading the way in making our roads safer. Are you ready to join us? And now, your host of the Driving Safety Show, Rich Sordahl.
Welcome to the Driving Safety Show. It's episode number 25. Our guest today has spent over 2 decades in traffic engineering and more than 9 years in the sales engineering profession, providing detailed street safety evaluations and recommendations, and educating the public about safer speeds on local and private road systems. Today, he is a senior regional manager at TrafficLogix, the global leader in traffic calming solutions. For the last 9 years, he has been partnering with governments, businesses, and local communities to help them improve road safety. He holds a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering from Syracuse University and is a registered professional engineer in New York. Coming to us from the Albany, New York area, Mark Gregory. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I get this question a lot. Sometimes when people say, well, why do you have to have a driving safety podcast? And I always end the episodes with the fact that there's 40,000 deaths, at least on an annual basis in the United States and 1.3 million worldwide. I notice you have these statistics on your website. You also talk about the World Health Organization says that traffic accidents are the only self-inflicted cause of death in that top 10 category. And the CDC also reports that ages 0 to 19, the leading cause of unintentional injury is driving. So you guys have that mission. You're very focused on that. And I think that really speaks to what you're doing, the mission, and on and on. So maybe related to that, and the dangers of driving overall, how did TrafficLogix get started? Maybe help us kind of understand the genesis of it.
Sure. We're a manufacturing company, and years ago, back in the late 90s, what was happening, there wasn't availability of products for local roadways. So a lot of your municipal agencies were forced to, based on public outcry of having a solution to slow people down, they were using parking lot solutions. And we became involved because we were a parking lot solution provider. We were a manufacturer of things that were meant for speeds in parking lots, which are typically 0 to 10 miles an hour. So when these are used on local roadways, it's not the right product. It's dangerous in a lot of ways. So we thought, listen, we're a manufacturer, maybe we can do better. So we hired some engineers. We got involved in doing that. And starting in the early 2000, 2003, 2004, we specifically made products designed for local road use. So the whole trick to traffic calming and speeds is to get the right product in the right location. And that's how things started at that point.
And when you say traffic calming, maybe help us understand what that really means.
Traffic calming overall, it's a proactive approach. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to affect the drivers they're speeding in excess of the local law or design speed for the roadway, and you're using products and traffic calming to get the greatest majority of all drivers to conform to speeds at all times. That's really the intent. Now, whether that's through education, whether that's through products or physical means, that's typically what you're trying to achieve, is get the greatest majority of drivers to comply to what the laws are and the rules are.
And so when you talk about the topic of traffic calming, that could be an actual device, but it could also be just the design of a road itself, how you engineer it?
Yes, absolutely. There are physical measures. That was kind of the one of the forms that was used as a permanent solution. The problem, I shouldn't say problem, but the issue with that is that it's an expensive endeavor. It takes a long time, a lot of capital money, And a lot of times you have communities, even whether they're private or public, it's over a large area. So now you're forced with the dilemma of, where do I spend the money? And it's so much money, maybe you can only attack one thing at a time. So physical measures, roundabouts, traffic circles, chicanes, things of those natures, all can be done. They're all great solutions, road narrowing, but they're fairly expensive solutions.
What type of products then do you have? I'm sure you categorize them based on the type of product, but maybe you can kind of help us understand what it is that TrafficLogix offers.
Sure. We have in-road devices, which are rubber devices that are actually go physically mounted in the roadway, whether permanent or temporary. We have speed awareness radar signs to inform drivers of their speeds, and speed cameras. For the rubber devices, they're great because they can be designed for a variety of speeds and basically any width of roadway. And we even have solutions that are specifically designed for emergency vehicle access, because that's another dilemma you have, whether it's a physical attribute or product that's put in the roadways, you still have to maintain access for emergency response. So we have products. We have a product called the Speed Cushion that allows only fire truck and emergency vehicle access, but impeding all other types of vehicles. Speed radar sign, is a general reminder of what the drivers are doing, how fast they're going. And we also have message signs. So you can say either thank you, thanking the driver for doing a good job and maintaining the speed, or you can say, based on a threshold, slow down or too fast, things of that nature to get them to be more aware of what they're doing and how fast they're going. The cameras are wonderful new addition. We just started release these probably last year before, at the end of that year. It's almost immediate compliance. No one likes their picture taken. Speed cameras, they go that one step more, where they're actually defining who the individual speeder is. So for example, you may have a community. It knows there's a bunch of speeders because all these devices are smart devices. They record the time, the date, the volume, the speed they were going, but they don't necessarily know who that is until you have one of our cameras, which is unique in the market. We can actually pick up the front or the rear license plate and actually track that. So now you know who the violator is, and you know how many times that one particular vehicle has made that violation. So that's kind of our toolbox of solutions currently as we have them now.
And on your website, it says the TrafficLogix has a presence on more than 10,000 streets worldwide. That's incredible. So obviously, with that kind of success, the product works and people are seeing those results. Are you in every region of the world?
Not every region, but I mean, we're a global company and we're growing at amazing rates throughout the world. We started as a North American company and have grown immensely every year, and we're proud of that. It speaks volumes to our engineering staff and our planners and designers and solutions that we offer.
On your website, you had a graph that talks about slower cars save lives, and you talk about the correlation between vehicle speed and pedestrian safety, and you go from the 20 miles an hour up to 40 miles an hour, and you talk about the changing chances of survivability if a pedestrian is struck. Are your traffic calming solutions mainly focused on like pedestrians and cyclists? Is that kind of the focus?
For the most part, I mean, it extends into work zones as well. There has been more of an emphasis on pedestrians now. We do some devices for bicycles, but it's mainly that type of vehicle. We have R&D on other products that will involve artificial intelligence, which we'll get into pedestrian counts here in the future. We're working on that now, and we recognize that that's a critical component of the factor of safety. So we're trying to affect that as well as time goes on.
What's interesting again related to that statistic, it's only going from 20 miles an hour to 40 miles an hour. Your chances of surviving go from 90% down to 10%. And you think about modern vehicles today, I'm sure you experience it, I do. You can be going 70 miles an hour and it feels like nothing because you're just in such an insulated environment.
Yeah.
And I wonder, sometimes I wonder if the cars are built too well in that sense, because you don't get that feedback from the road.
You don't, and I mean, part of this with electric vehicles and autonomous vehicles and everything, and the electric scooters, we talk about electric scooters and all that stuff. There's a reason for technology, and you're going to have some growing pains, and it's unfortunate. You'll have some issues with that, and you're right. They're so advanced, and so easy, and comfortable, and quiet. You don't know how fast you're going, and how dangerous that is. Most people don't understand how scary that is. I mean, we see it on a day-to-day basis, but all that really comes down to education. It's like, I guess for a good example is if you take a stop sign, when stop signs were first invented, it's a simple tool, used correctly. It does a lot of good immediately. Used incorrectly, it can be dangerous, so it just takes time and education of the public, and we'll get there, but all these technologies are fantastic, and it's just going to take some time.
I'm glad you actually mentioned the e-scooters thing. I didn't have this written down here to ask you about, but because I've been seeing so much of that in the news lately, and cities are starting to take a second look at e-scooter programs and seeing if there's some changes need to be implemented. And I think one of them I've heard discussed is this debate about whether or not there should be a dedicated pathway for e-scooters. And I'm just curious if you're hearing anything about that right now.
Yeah, we don't. It's not really our market segment, but I mean, of course, I watch the industry news and progressions and innovations, and yeah, I think like anything, it's helpful to have a dedicated area. Sidewalks are a good example of that. I think it's a good idea. It's a matter of obtaining a policy that's universal in all settings, so that it's, if you're here in New York, or you're here in Florida where you are, or somewhere else in the country, you have the same expectation, because now we're in a mobile environment now, whether it's online or whether it's physically, it's easy to get around, and you want to be able to have the same experience either locally or in another area, be safe in all areas. So I think, yes, the answer to that is yes, there should be something that's dedicated to that.
No, related to speed humps, I saw also on your website, the American Journal of Public Health says that there's a 53 to 60% reduction in the odds of injury or death for children with traffic calming in their neighborhoods. What are some of the common applications that you're seeing requested for the use of speed humps?
We see a lot usually at grade crossings, whether it's in a municipality somewhere or at schools. That's a big request that we have to use some of the rubber devices as well as signs. That also transpires over to private industry, whether it's a hospital or a campus or you have a lot of large facilities that need these. Manufacturing plants or even mines. We do a lot of ports and things like that, and even military applications. It's really where the greatest and the severity of impact is where you have a great disparity in speeds. So as you can imagine, you're coming in from an interstate, now you're coming into a little village, or you're in a manufacturing plant where you're coming off a highway, and now you're coming into a heavy pedestrian area. It's that the variance in speeds, from a crosswalk, which you really need to be at 0 to 5 miles an hour. And as we spoke of earlier, cars can go to 20, 30 in a matter of seconds. So those are usually the applications where they're most critical. You get a lot even inside buildings where you have factories and forklift drivers where, they're required to drive at a slow speed, but, the impact that they're having is pedestrians that are standing, so I mean, it varies. It varies in a lot of different aspects.
You mentioned, for instance, like hospitals or maybe other types of private industry when they're using speed humps. I'm interested in knowing, do you seem to find a trend where these are being implemented at the beginning when something is built, or is it usually after the fact because they're noticing complaints and incidents that are taking place on their property?
Years ago, I would say it was after the fact. Now we're often involved with engineering firms, consultants, contractors, DOTs early on in the process. I mean, half of our starting in January, most of our time is spent with the planners where they want us involved. Say, listen, what's your criteria for your products? Because the real effectiveness of any traffic calming product is getting the right product in the right place and correct installation. And all that really starts at the planning level. And, again, the internet has helped us. Programs like yourself and what you do has helped both all the communities and manufacturers be involved where we should be involved as early on.
What about radar signs? You mentioned a little bit of it in the beginning when you're introducing the products. How does that work?
Radar sign uses a Doppler radar for our signs, and it detects and displays speeds from 3 to 99 miles an hour here in North America. It's what it's looking for is a mass, and it detects a mass at a distance, and then it measures that speed in relationship to the change in speed over time, and gives you an actual what the car is doing as it's approaching that particular device. So that if it's over a threshold, the sign is intelligent. So if it's under the threshold, it can do nothing. It doesn't have to be any impact. But once it starts creeping up on higher and higher speeds, you can have varying levels of awareness, whether it's the speed will flash or change color, or you'll have a strobe, or the camera kicks in and then takes your picture. So it's detection based on analytics.
So there's two different versions then. There's one that's really just to increase awareness, and then the other one actually has enforcement or citation capabilities.
Our cameras have, some of our higher-end cameras, yes, have enforcement. You can ticket off of them. We have our own ticketing software. It depends on what you want to do with it. We're unique in that fact in the industry because it's whoever the client is, they own that information. So it's up to them whether they want to issue warning citations, do nothing with the information, or pinpoint targeted, enforcement by the local police, or local police, if it's legal in your area, like New York City DOT has these. Rhode Island, Georgia has recently approved use of these in school zones, which has become the major factor of this. You can actually ticket people, and it becomes a legal tool that you can use.
Also related to the radar signs and speed camera systems, I saw on your website you reference in many studies that seem to basically really reaffirm the effects and the impact that the camera systems are having. One was Bellevue, Washington study where the overall reduction in vehicle speeds was from 1 to 6 miles an hour and even up to 8 years after the signs were installed. So I think
Sure.
just there alone, I think that's tremendous credit to what the system is doing. What I also found interesting with traffic calming was some of the other things too. And it actually encourages varied transportation modes, increases property values, reduces crime, and improves street aesthetics. Are you finding some of those similar results?
Yeah, some of our greatest success stories. I tell you one. We did one in Plainville, Connecticut, and what it was, they had a mall area on one side of a housing development, and then they had the school on the other side. This was a cut-through road between where they had stop signs in place. They had your standard traffic engineering devices in place, but people weren't stopping at the stop signs. They were speeding, and the residents complained. The police officers, local police, made attempts to go out there and do enforcement, but it's tough to find when they were out there. And just the manpower and the cost of doing that was difficult. And the residents had so many close calls that they were considering selling their houses, and a lot of the homes were actually for sale. So they were desperate. Town manager got us out there, and we were always welcome to come out and walk through a site with people and help them, get us to understand what the actual issues are. We did that. We made some recommendations based on the speeds they needed and locations and everything. They implemented these devices, they used speed tables in this particular case. And they put them in, and he used to call me every other day, and said, when can come out, and when are we going to get our solutions? And after they had them installed, I didn't hear from them 6 months, 8 months, and I finally called them, and I said, hey, how's it going? It's fantastic. Haven't got one phone call. We love that. We love that because it's a tremendous success. All the for sale signs were gone. Everyone was happy, and you're not. One of the misconceptions about traffic calming is that you're pushing the problem somewhere else. A correctly designed product will actually keep the volumes there. It gets everyone to do what they're supposed to be doing and slow down, and not pushing the problem to another location, which is not what you want to do.
And Mark, what about the industries that TrafficLogix serves? Who can benefit from your solutions?
Really, anybody, public or private. You'd be surprised at the variety of settings. Like I said, we've done multiple ports, shipping areas, major and international airport locations, tons of residential communities, schools, colleges, factories. Like I said, both, believe it or not, both inside and outside. You have some large factory settings that have forklift drivers both inside and outside. It's a very dangerous situation. We've had that. Military checkpoints. It's really endless. There's not many that we haven't tackled so far.
And what about the process for getting started then? So let's say a municipality, for instance, or whatever it might be, they are looking to use some of your solutions. What does the implementation process look like?
Well, done correctly, and a lot of communities do it correctly. Again, it's whether it's proactive or not. It's after the fact, or you're trying to educate the communities. If done correctly, it starts grassroots with the residents, involving a survey and involving a survey of the roadways and a survey of the residents who's in favor of this. Get a petition. You have to look for funding. There's a variety of funding sources like AAA Safety, or Walmart actually now has a program to help local residents for safety and safe routes to school, things like that. You also want to get, all your municipal agencies involved, whether it's the superintendent of public works, certainly your EMS, police support, firemen, fire chief should be involved. Do that baseline study, find out really, is it a perception or is it a real problem? Get the approval of the community, and then you move into selecting the right product. Make sure you have the right installation. Make sure you have a maintenance program set up, as well as planning for the future. Like I said, you done correctly, you're tackling one portion of the problem, but there's always probably more than you can handle. So you want to look at sustained planning for the future as well. So we're lucky in the fact that we're the manufacturer. We design all the hardware and software, so we can easily adapt. And as time goes on, we're always innovating. So as time changes, communities change. We'll hopefully be a good partner with people for traffic safety forward.
And what about maintenance or service? Like, for instance, the camera systems, do they require any ongoing maintenance, or are they pretty much they run themselves?
No, they're all pretty much self-sufficient. We do include in all our products, whether it's rubber, radar, or cameras, free technical support, training, either web-based or remote. Of course, we have many people in the field as well. But yeah, there's not much. They're highly technical devices, but they're certified. They meet all the criteria for FCC, for the manual uniform traffic control devices, as well as weather-resistant dust, weather, rain, and influence like that. So they're designed to last. Our goal really is, once we sell a product, is to have the product and service at all times. We do a lot of stuff remotely so that it doesn't have to be sent back or anything. So we've had great success, great longevity with our products.
And Mark, you have a cloud-based aspect to your solution too that helps manage data. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And how does that work?
Cloud-based it uses cell phone technology. So you have internet access in an area, and that could be, there's not many places that don't have cell-based coverage now these days. So what that allows you to do is remotely check on a device, check on the battery level. In fact, they're smart enough to even tell you when the battery is running low. But the greater benefit is instant access to the data that you're collecting, and everything's stored in the cloud. It's relatively inexpensive. And then you have long-term access to the data. So you can put a sign out this year, and in 5 years, compare, what was done last year or what was done a few years ago to now. Many communities have even started putting these on their own public interface. They have a local, website for their community. Instead of calling the police chief and using his time and efforts and whatever, they can say, hey, someone just went, 60 miles an hour on our street. They can look it up and almost live and look at the data and say, well, Mrs. Jones, they weren't going 60. It just looked at, or Mrs. Jones, you're right. And we're going to get an officer out there right away and see if we can find out who that speeder is, So it makes for, almost immediate and definable time periods for recognition of what's going on, in your community.
Now, Mark, as we wrap up here, what's coming up for TrafficLogix? Do you have any new projects or anything that you're working on that you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, we have some fantastic new devices. We have a large, as you know, work zone fatalities are a big issue in this country as well as globally. So we have a large VMS board we just released this last month. It can be either truck mounted or trailer mounted. That is a full message board as well as a radar board that'd be very effective. We're getting also this year, we're releasing a traffic counter, which allows you to, you don't have to use the pneumatic tubes like the old fashioned style. Now you can use, just like our signs, a radar detector to get volumes, which, relatively inexpensive again, and it's a nice tool for people to have. And finally, the most exciting is artificial intelligence. We're getting into cameras that can now detect if, say, you have a bike lane and there's a car in a bike lane, or if there's a car in a bus lane, which, believe it or not, is again, it's very dangerous. It's that variance in speed. When you have a lane that is dedicated for bikes at 5 miles an hour, now you have a car that's going 30 or 40. That can be deadly. So artificial intelligence is something that we're developing now. You will see from our company in the future, as well as our software, continuing software improvements with our cloud-based solutions as well.
What about any events, or does TrafficLogix do any trade shows, or do you do any kind of public seminars?
Yes, we do a lot of public events. So we do transportation engineers, we do public works shows and vendor shows. National Conference of Police's Chief of Police shows, many of those, as well as regional ones. I'm doing one next week in New Jersey for, a few areas in New Jersey for the police force. We can, at any time, we can give live webinars on live systems throughout the world, so if you want to see something that's going on, whether it's a camera or a sign, how it works, or our products, we're always welcome to do that. So we're always welcome to meet one-on-one. We enjoy that very much. Gives you a sense of comfort of the expertise we have available to us for the public and any private issue they have.
And just so anybody, if someone's interested in learning more about TrafficLogix, it's TrafficLogix.com. We'll put a link here on the screen. And you also have a YouTube presence as well, I believe.
Yes. Yeah. We do many videos, whether it's a case study or testimonials that are on YouTube, and it's nothing better than real input from real users. And we've been doing that a long time, believe it or not, since way back in I think the first one I did was back in 2008. So there's a lot of information out there. It's all great. And if you can't find it or you want something specific, please reach out to us. We'd be more than happy to direct you.
Mark, any final message that you'd like to leave with us?
Just, be aware. Be safe, slow down. It's more important than you think.
I appreciate that. Thanks so much for your time, Mark. I really enjoyed listening to some of your solutions. I think it's super commendable. We need more companies and people like yourself out there doing this, because it's 40,000+ deaths just in the United States alone and 1.3 million worldwide. Is just, there's got to be a better way.
Yeah, I agree. I support you, and thank you as well. Tremendous venue for this. I appreciate that very much.
Thanks, Mark.
Take care.
Once again, that was Mark Gregory, Senior Regional Manager at TrafficLogix, the global leader in traffic calming solutions. Please share this podcast with your family, friends, and coworkers, and help us educate the public about critical driving safety issues. 40,000 people die on America's roads every year, 1.3 million worldwide. That's just unacceptable. Until next time, please drive safely.
You've been listening to the Driving Safety Show. To stay up to date on the latest episodes, visit driversalert.com/driving-safety-podcast. There you can sign up for episode notifications, listen to past episodes, and even request to be a guest on the show. And don't forget, the Driving Safety Show is the show that features the movers and shakers who are working hard to make our roads safer. See you next time.